Hold up before you scroll away. This could mean thousands of extra dollars in your pocket every single year if you worked hard and paid into Social Security before 1997. The government has just confirmed a major benefit change that could significantly raise your monthly check. And most Americans have absolutely no idea this is happening right now. We're talking about a real confirmed pay raise, not a rumor, not a maybe, affecting millions of retired workers, spouses, and survivors across the country. People who spent decades building this nation, raising families, and paying their dues are finally getting what they deserve. But here's the part that will shock you. Not everyone qualifies automatically. There are specific rules, key deadlines, and important steps you need to know to make sure you don't miss out on a single dollar. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break it all down. Who qualifies, how much more you could receive, and exactly what you need to do next. This is one video you cannot afford to skip. And if you want to make sure your family members and friends don't miss out either, hit that thumbs up button right now so this reaches every American who earned it. Let's get into it. If this helped you, smash that like button so more hardworking Americans can find this information before it's too late. And just like that, we are going to get right into it because what has just been confirmed by Social Security is not something you want to sit on. This is not something you want to push to the back of your mind and say you will deal with it later. This is the kind of news that can genuinely change your day-to-day life in a very real and very measurable way. And if you or someone in your family worked and paid into Social Security at any point before 1997, or really at any point during a career that included public service of any kind, then you are going to want to hear every single word of what we are about to share with you right now. So get comfortable, settle in, because this information is important. It is real, and it has the potential to put significantly more money into your pocket every single month for the rest of your life. Let us start with what has actually been confirmed and why this is as significant as we are telling you it is. For years, and we genuinely mean many, many years, there has been a quiet but deeply unfair penalty sitting inside the Social Security system. This penalty was not advertised on the front page of newspapers. It was not something the Social Security Administration was sending out press releases about. It was buried deep in the technical rules of how benefits are calculated, and it had been quietly cutting the monthly payments of millions of Americans who spent their careers working in certain public sector jobs. We are talking about teachers who devoted their lives to educating the next generation of Americans. We are talking about firefighters who ran into burning buildings while everyone else was running out. We are talking about police officers who worked the overnight shifts and weekends protecting their communities. We are talking about postal workers, nurses who worked in government hospitals, city and county employees, state government workers, and federal employees across every branch and department you can name. People who gave their entire working lives, their best years, their energy, their dedication to serving their communities, and this great country were being financially penalized through two specific provisions in the Social Security law that the vast majority of ordinary Americans had never even heard of. One was called the Windfall Elimination Provision, and the other was called the Government Pension Offset. Together, these two rules had been quietly reducing and in some cases completely eliminating the Social Security benefits that these workers and their spouses had fully earned and fully expected to receive when they finally hung up their work shoes and retired. Now, here is what makes this moment so significant and why we want you to fully understand the weight of what has happened. The Social Security Fairness Act, a piece of legislation that had been fought for and pushed forward by advocates, unions, retiree organizations, teacher associations, firefighter groups, and hardworking Americans for literally decades, has now been signed into law. And what this law does is repeal both of these provisions entirely. That means millions of Americans who had been receiving reduced Social Security benefits because of WEPI or GPO are now going to see their monthly payments go up, sometimes by a substantial amount. We are talking about people seeing hundreds of dollars more every single month appearing in their bank account. And we are also talking about retroactive payments that could mean some folks are entitled to back pay going all the way back to when the law was enacted. That is real money. That is money that belongs to real people who earned it through decades of honest hard work, and who frankly should have been receiving it all along. The system let these people down for years. Now it is working to make it right. Let us take a meaningful moment to explain what these two provisions were actually doing to people's benefits, because it is really important to understand the mechanics of what was happening, so that you can fully appreciate what this change means for you and for your family. The Windfall Elimination Provision, commonly called WEP, was a rule that reduced Social Security retirement or disability benefits for workers who had spent part of their career in a job that did not pay into Social Security, but who had also worked in other jobs that did pay into the system. The idea behind WEP when it was originally written into law back in the 1980s was that the Social Security benefit formula was intentionally designed to replace a higher percentage of income for lower-wage workers. And lawmakers at the time were concerned that some public employees might appear on paper to be low-income workers because their Social Security-covered employment represented only part of their career history. So they created this provision to reduce benefits for those workers trying to prevent what they saw as an unintended windfall. The problem, and it was a profound and deeply unfair problem that affected millions of real retirement budgets, was that in practice, WEP ended up punishing workers who had legitimately earned benefits in two entirely separate systems through two entirely separate categories of employment. A teacher in Ohio who spent 25 years in the public school system and then spent another 15 years working in the private sector and paying into Social Security. Every single paycheck was being penalized every single month in retirement. Seeing her Social Security benefit reduced by hundreds of dollars simply because of the years she devoted to educating children in a public school. A firefighter in California who retired from the fire department after decades of service and then took a second career in the private sector was facing that same unjust reduction. A postal worker who switched careers and moved into state government employment later in life was caught in the same trap. None of these workers had done anything wrong. None of them had gained the system or received any kind of unfair advantage. They had simply worked in multiple employment sectors over the course of their careers, and they were being punished for it. That was not sound policy. It was not equitable. It was never fair. And now, thanks to the repeal of this provision, it is finally and permanently being corrected. The government pension offset, known as GPO, was in many respects an even more damaging provision for families, and the human stories that have emerged from this particular rule over the years are genuinely heartbreaking in ways that are hard to fully convey in words. GPO was a rule that reduced spousal and survivor Social Security benefits for people who received a pension from a government job that did not pay into Social Security. What this meant in real human terms was devastating for countless families across America. A wife whose husband had worked 35 or 40 years in the private sector and had paid into Social Security faithfully every single paycheck could find her spousal benefit, or worse, her survivor benefit after her husband passed away, reduced dramatically or eliminated entirely, simply because she herself had worked as a public school teacher or as a city government employee and was receiving a modest government pension of her own. In many cases, the GPO reduction was so severe that these surviving spouses ended up receiving absolutely zero in Social Security survivor benefits, despite the fact that their husbands or wives had contributed to the system faithfully for the entirety of their working lives. Widows and widowers who had lost their life partners were left with nothing from their loved one's Social Security record, not a single dollar, purely because of the type of job they themselves had held decades earlier. That is a profound injustice that affected hundreds of thousands of families across the United States, and it is one that advocates had been tirelessly working to correct for a very, very long time now. Both of these provisions are completely gone. They have been repealed by law. They will no longer affect anyone's benefits from this point forward. And that means if you or someone you love was affected by either WEP or GPO, there is a very strong and real chance that your Social Security benefit is about to increase. And depending on how significantly your benefit had been reduced, that increase could be genuinely life-changing in the most positive and meaningful sense of those words. So let us talk about who exactly is going to benefit and by how much, because these are the numbers that matter most to real people planning their real lives. The Social Security Administration has estimated that approximately 3 million people who were subject to the WEP reduction are now going to see their monthly benefits increase as a result of the repeal. The average increase for those affected by WEP is expected to be around $360 per month, though the actual amount for any specific individual will vary depending on that person's earnings history and how significantly their benefit had been reduced under the old rules. For some people, the increase will be somewhat smaller, perhaps in the range of $100 to $200 per month. For others, those whose benefits had been reduced by the maximum possible WEP penalty, the increase will be considerably higher, potentially reaching $500 or $600 per month or more. Every situation is different, and the exact numbers depend on the individual's specific circumstances. For those affected by the government pension offset, the numbers can be even more significant, and in some cases can represent a truly dramatic improvement in a person's financial situation. There are an estimated 700,000 people who had their spousal or survivor benefits completely eliminated by GPO, and approximately another 190,000 who had their benefits partially reduced but not fully eliminated. For the people who were receiving absolutely zero in spousal or survivor benefits because of GPO, the repeal means they may now begin receiving a spousal or survivor benefit for the very first time, which in many cases could mean a monthly payment of well over $1,000 that they had never been receiving before. For those who were receiving a benefit that was partially reduced by GPO, the monthly amount they receive will increase, sometimes very significantly. Taken altogether, the Social Security Administration has estimated that the total number of Americans who stand to benefit from this landmark legislative change is in the range of 3.2 million people. 3.2 million Americans, the vast majority of them retired, most of them elderly, most of them living on fixed incomes and doing their careful best every single month to make their money last, who are now going to start seeing more money in their monthly Social Security payments. That is an enormous number of people whose financial lives are going to improve. That is genuinely historic, and it deserves to be recognized and celebrated as such. Now let us talk about something that is critically important, and that a great many people are understandably asking about, and that is the question of retroactive payments. Because of the specific provisions of this law and the date on which it was enacted, there is a provision for back pay. And this is where things get truly important for people to understand clearly. The Social Security Administration is actively and urgently working to process these adjustments and issue payments to those who are owed them. The retroactive payment covers the period going back to when the law took effect. And for many people, that could represent a significant lump sum payment arriving at once. If your monthly benefit is increasing by $350 and you are owed back pay for several months, you could be looking at a supplemental payment of $2,000, $3,000, or more dollars all at once in addition to your increased going forward monthly payments. For a retired person or a widow living carefully on a fixed income, that kind of one-time payment can make a tremendous and very immediate practical difference. There is also a very important question about what people actually need to do or do not need to do in order to receive these adjustments. And this is something we want to be crystal clear about because confusion on this point could cause people to miss out. If you are already receiving Social Security benefits and you were affected by either WEP or GPO, you do not necessarily need to file a brand new claim application from the beginning. The Social Security Administration is actively working through its records to identify the people who are affected and to make the necessary adjustments to their accounts. However, and this is a critically important however, it is absolutely essential that the information on file with Social Security for your account is current and fully accurate. That means making sure your mailing address is current. That means confirming that your direct deposit banking information is correct so that any payments go to the right account. It means making sure that your earnings record accurately reflects your complete work history. If there are any inaccuracies or gaps in your Social Security earnings record, which is actually more common than many people realize, especially for work performed many years ago, this could potentially affect how your adjustment is calculated. The Social Security Administration is dealing with a massive and truly unprecedented volume of adjustments right now across millions of individual accounts. While they have publicly committed to getting payments processed and distributed as quickly as their systems allow, the reality of working through millions of cases is that it is going to take time. Not every affected person will see their adjustment appear in the same month. The processing is happening in waves based on various administrative factors. What this means for you personally is that if you believe you should be receiving an increase and you have not yet seen it reflected in your payments, it does not necessarily indicate that something has gone wrong or that you have been overlooked. It may simply mean your case is still in the processing queue, but it also means that staying actively informed, checking your My Social Security online account regularly, reading any correspondence from the SSA carefully, and reaching out directly if you have specific questions is going to be very important in the weeks and months ahead. Let us also make sure we are talking about the people who may be affected by this change, but who are not currently receiving any Social Security benefits at all, because this is a group that sometimes gets overlooked in these conversations, and they deserve just as much attention. If you worked in a public sector job at any point in your career and you made the decision to hold off on claiming Social Security because the benefit you were going to receive was going to be reduced so significantly by WEP or GPO that it barely seemed worth the paperwork, you may want to very seriously and urgently revisit that decision right now. The reduction that was going to affect your benefit no longer exists in the law. The financial calculation has completely changed. Depending on your current age, your specific work history, your other sources of retirement income, and your overall financial picture, it may now make excellent sense to file for Social Security benefits sooner than you had planned, or to go ahead and file now if you have simply been putting it off. This is genuinely something you will want to discuss with a qualified financial advisor or a Social Security claiming expert who can review your individual situation and help you understand the best strategy going forward. And there is a critically important group of people who may not even realize they are now entitled to benefits they were previously denied. And we want to make very sure we reach these folks. That group is widows and widowers. If your spouse worked and paid into Social Security over the course of a career and you yourself worked in a public sector position and were previously told perhaps years or even decades ago that you were not eligible for spousal or survivor benefits because of the government pension offset, that determination is no longer valid. The rule that produced it has been repealed. You may now be fully eligible for a survivor benefit based on your late spouse's Social Security earnings record. And if so, you absolutely need to contact the Social Security Administration and file for that benefit. It will not come to you automatically if you have never submitted a claim. You must initiate the process. And this is not something to put off or leave for another day. We also want to be entirely honest and transparent with you about something important because there is a great deal of information and some misinformation circulating right now, and we want to make sure you are always working from accurate, verified facts. The increases we are describing today are real. The repeal of WEP and GPO is real. It is the law and it cannot be undone without additional legislation. The figure of 3.2 million Americans who stand to benefit comes directly from the Social Security Administration. But the specific dollar amount that any specific individual person is going to receive will depend entirely on their own unique circumstances, their specific earnings history, the precise amount their benefit was being reduced under the old rules, and the nature of their pension and work history. No one can tell you with certainty exactly how much your benefit is going to increase without reviewing the complete details of your individual situation. What we can tell you with full confidence is that if you believe you are in the affected group, you should be taking steps to investigate and confirm that right now, not next week. Let us make the human impact of this change as concrete and tangible as possible, because policy language can sometimes obscure the real meaning of what we are talking about. Consider a 72-year-old retired teacher. She spent 25 years in a public school classroom in a state where teachers did not pay into Social Security. Then she spent 15 more years working in the private sector before retiring, paying Social Security taxes on every paycheck during those 15 years. Under the WEP rules that existed before this law was passed, her Social Security retirement benefit was being reduced by approximately $400 every single month. She had accepted this reduction for years because she did not fully understand why it was happening, and she was told by the people she asked that this was just how the rules worked. Now those rules are gone. She is going to receive $400 more every month. Over the remaining years of a normal lifespan, we are potentially talking about $50,000, $60,000 or more in additional Social Security income that she rightfully earned and that she is now going to receive. That changes lives. That changes choices. That changes what is possible in retirement. Or consider a 78-year-old widow living on her own. Her husband spent his entire working career in private industry, paying into Social Security faithfully for 40 years. She spent her own career, 30 years, working for her county government, and she receives a modest government pension as a result. Under the old GPO rules, her survivor benefit from her husband's Social Security record was completely wiped out. She received absolutely nothing from all those decades of his contributions, not because of anything she or her husband did wrong, but because of how the offset formula worked. Now GPO is gone. She is going to be eligible to claim a survivor benefit based on her husband's earnings record. For a widow in her late 70s living carefully on a fixed income, receiving an additional monthly payment of $1,000 or more is not a small improvement. It is a fundamental change in her financial security and her daily quality of life. These are not hypothetical situations constructed to make a point. These are the kinds of circumstances that millions of real Americans across this country have been living with in quiet frustration for years. And now, finally, the law has recognized the injustice and corrected it. In terms of concrete practical steps, here is exactly what people in this situation should be doing right now, starting today. First, get your records organized. Gather your pension statements, your Social Security statements, and any documentation you have of your work history, especially any public sector employment, and any work that predates 1997. Second, log into your My Social Security account at ssa.gov. If you do not have an account, create one. It is free and it is the most reliable way to see your current benefit information, your earnings record, and any updates or adjustments to your account. Review your earnings record carefully to make sure it is accurate and complete. Third, if you have questions about whether you specifically are affected or if you want to check on the status of your adjustment, contact the Social Security Administration directly. Their national number is on ssa.gov, and you can also visit a local Social Security office if you prefer to speak with someone in person. The lines are busier than usual right now, but do not let that discourage you. Your financial security is worth the time. Fourth, and this cannot be overstated, be extremely careful about scammers who are already actively working to take advantage of the news about this change. The Social Security Administration will never contact you unsolicited and ask for your bank account number or routing number. They will never ask you to pay any kind of fee to process or expedite your benefits. They will never ask you to purchase gift cards or wire money. Any phone call, text message, email, or piece of mail you receive claiming that you need to pay money or provide sensitive personal information in order to receive your increased payments should be treated as a scam and reported to the proper authorities. Please protect yourself and please pass this warning along to any elderly relatives or friends in your life who might be potential targets. What this change ultimately represents when you step back and look at the full picture is something far bigger than a number on a monthly statement. It represents the correction of a systemic unfairness that persisted for far too long in a system that American workers trusted and contributed to their entire careers. It represents a recognition by the law that the people who chose careers in public service, who taught our children, protected our neighborhoods, and kept our governments running, deserve exactly the same dignity and retirement security as everyone else. It represents the enduring power of ordinary Americans who refused to give up on fighting for what was right. Even when they were told for years that the political will was not there, that the budget numbers did not work, that they should just be patient and wait a little longer, they waited and they won. And that matters. What also matters enormously right now is making sure that every single person who is entitled to these new or increased benefits actually learns that they are entitled and takes the steps necessary to receive what they have earned. Not everyone who is eligible is going to know that they are eligible. There are people right now in rural communities and small towns and big cities across every state in this country who have absolutely no idea that this change has occurred, or who vaguely heard something about it, but do not realize it applies specifically to them. That is why the conversations we have with the people in our lives genuinely matter. Sharing this kind of information with a neighbor, a friend, a parent, a sibling, or a fellow retiree at the community center or at your church is a real and meaningful act of care. You might be the reason someone discovers they are entitled to hundreds of dollars more every month. That is not a small thing. So, as we bring this conversation to a close, let us make sure the key points are absolutely clear in your mind. The Social Security Fairness Act has repealed both the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, both of them permanently. An estimated 3.2 million Americans are expected to see meaningful increases in their Social Security benefits as a direct result. The average monthly increase for WEP-affected recipients is approximately $360, and those affected by GPO, including spouses and survivors who were receiving reduced or zero benefits,